And I think a lot of nuance has been lost in this conversation because at the end of the day, I think both parties are at fault. Ubisoft made an error in the game. They had an exploit. When you sign up to play the game, you sign a TOS. That means you cannot use these exploits. So those that did it also in the wrong. And I think Varsity, if he had his time over, needs to, if he finds this, use his contacts to contact Ubisoft directly. Get them aware of this and fix it. Don't farm clout from it and then go back and delete the video because you know you're in the wrong. If that doesn't work, R6 Fix is there. Literally just use that, report it, and then you absolve yourself of all responsibility.
Yeah, and we're up to episode 15 for the Siege show. Big episode because I say it every week, but it's actually true. I won't lie. I've seen the document and we've got a lot to talk about. So first things first, shave my head. We'll get that out of the way. Look, not the greatest look. I'm not going to lie. I got to a point where I was like, I need a haircut. And I'm just so lazy. So I said to Laura, my wife, and I was like, just shave it off. And she's very indifferent on it.
I remember talking to you about this and you floated the idea. You said like a couple of weeks back, I'm just going to shave my head. I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, right.
Because you're the kind of guy who sits there and just plays with it all the time. Maybe that's why you got rid of it. But yeah, I think I've adjusted to the look. We may or may not have just recorded content prior to this, which will be released in future. So a little bit of a teaser.
Yeah,
if you're in the Patreon Discord, you already know what that's about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, are you plugging the Patreon 2 minutes into the episode,
Sorry.
mate? Come on.
Move along. First point.
Yeah, first point. So obviously we've got a couple of different discussion points to get to. First is from Macie J regarding the point system in Siege, which sometimes I saw this in the topic and I was like, point system? I was like, sometimes you just even forget it's a thing. Like, it's just not really something that's spoken about or talked about, and probably rightfully so. Does it even need to be in the game? Is it necessary? Obviously, you would have thrown up the old tweet, and I guess that's maybe the question for you. Do you even need the points? Like, what does it do? What does it accomplish? Is it just meant to be kind of like an archaic holdover from the likes of, the early days of COD where you get 100 XP for a kill?
Yeah, so the original tweet was pretty much critiquing like Tuberel getting, more points than he otherwise should be compared to, other gadget interactions, etc. So he was sort of just pointing out that discrepancy, and then it kind of opened into a larger discussion about the point system as a whole. Is it necessary? What's the actual point of it? And I think the idea of it in its core is actually quite valid, because Siege is an incredibly complex game with a lot of interactions, and it's not, as frag dependent as much as people want to say it is, compared to the likes of a Call of Duty where, KD is like arguably the most important number. In Siege, it isn't. So there needs to be a way to reflect that in game. And so the point system kind of tries to do that, but it often does feel like arbitrary numbers just assigned to different actions and doesn't probably best reflect a player's impact in the game. So I don't have an issue with the system. There probably needs to be something outside of kills to differentiate the scoreboard and reward players that, flex and support. But perhaps it is something that needs to be refined or reworked.
Why do you get more points then for a headshot than planting? Isn't that the point, as you just said? Like, you want to be getting points for these kind of arbitrary actions, planting or denials or whatever, or util usage, and yet you get a headshot, you get more points than that. So I think it's fine. Like, the question being, is it necessary? Probably not necessary. Like, you don't need it, but I think it's a nice thing to have, and it is a good way of sort of indicating, outside of just KDA, if someone's actually being quite useful to the team, and actually doing other roles within the game itself, which obviously Siege is the kind of game where there is actually a lot more happening in terms of util usage and droning and all of these kind of things. So not necessary, but I think it's fine to have, but maybe it could do actually with a bit of a fine-tuning pass over in terms of the points, the way it's distributed. I think that's probably it. And like, also, should the scoreboard then show more stats? Should it show things like plants? What is that? Trades? I don't think you can do trades.
Yeah,
but
you can. Yeah, I mean,
how would you show, like, on the scoreboard?
Yeah, I mean, there's like third-party trackers you can get that have like an enhanced scoreboard, right? So you can see things like, like pretty much Siege GG stats, but in game, like trades.
Is that Overwolf? Like,
yeah. Or R6 tracker. I can't remember which one does it. Maybe they both do now. Is that something that should maybe be in the game, or is that information overload? Because again, it's important to remember that less than or close to about 50% of people play ranked, and you say the top half of that maybe cares about this stuff. I don't know. It's probably like 20% of the player base. So
do you just do it like
is it worth
CS? I know we always talk about CS.
Oh, with like the toggle?
With the toggle.
And has like
you get a little
basic
bit
and
more,
advanced.
yeah.
I think that'd be cool. And that would satisfy, you know, like the stat nerds and stuff.
Throwing the cost or whatever. And
yeah. I think it'd be cool. And like that, all that data, as far as I understand, is like, it's already baked in because it links into the esports website. So all that data is being tracked. Perhaps it's not accurate enough or reliable enough to be put into the main build. So it might be something that needs to be more refined. But I think that'd be cool. You could have like util damage. You could have, there's so many interesting stats in Siege.
I thought
you could have like total
damage.
drone time, like all kinds of crazy
just
stuff.
damage in general, like just as a raw stat, the way it is in CS
Headshot
now.
percentage, like
being able to also sort the leaderboard based on damage or based on, you know, KD or whatever. I think, yeah, I mean,
you don't want it to be information overload. That's why like a toggle option would be nice, but
yeah,
maybe something to explore. I don't know.
I think the toggle option would be good. It does mean that Ubisoft would have to go in and under the hood and obviously refine the scoreboard system. Probably due for it though. It's been a couple of years now since they implemented the current
UI.
user interface anyway. So look, points necessary? Probably not, but I think it's fine. I think it just needs to pass over and improve the scoreboard a little bit. All of these are being tracked, so bring it in. Moving on, we've got big controversy regarding obviously the recent exploit, which obviously you'll be a little bit more aware of, but through the Doctor's Curse event there was quite a lot of people exploiting basically free R6 credits, a whole mess. We were a little bit privy behind the scenes as to sort of the shenanigans going on. Not really, most of it though public, and most of it actually through the discourse of Twitter, through Varsity Gaming as well, and sort of surrounding the event. But what was it, like 19,000 bans or something to that tune? I mean, it was a pretty big ban event for Siege.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of context behind this, and I'll approach it from the perspective that people watching this may have absolutely no idea what we're talking about, so it's important to provide that. During the Doctor's Curse event, like every other event in Siege, you could purchase packs with Renown. If you owned every item in the collection and you bought packs with Renown, you were refunded, but you weren't refunded Renown, you were instead refunded that difference in credits. So people that, perhaps had all the items or bought all the items and had a stack of Renown, kept buying packs, and in doing so were able to earn pretty much thousands, or I think in some cases tens of thousands of free credits. So this is like hundreds of dollars worth of in-game currency. Now, I don't know how impactful this video was in making or bringing this exploit to life, but Varsity made a TikTok about it. As far as I'm aware, it had a couple 100K views, basically saying, guys, don't do this exploit, but here's a 1-minute tutorial on how to do it. That video has since been taken down. I couldn't find it. I also watched another commentary video about this. They said they couldn't find it either. So I think Varsity is trying to wipe his hands clean of this a little bit. And then the whole controversy started. So allegedly, I haven't been able to confirm this with any other sources, so I don't know how reliable it actually is. Allegedly, 19,000 accounts were banned. That number is suspiciously the exact same as the most recent ban phase in early 2023, where there was another exploit, dupe ban, allegedly. So I'm not giving that number a lot of accuracy because it's the exact same number, which seems like a big coincidence. But yeah, sounds like there's been a ban wave. Temporary is what people are saying, a couple of weeks for those that abused it, and it was only those that went over a threshold. So if you accidentally did it a couple times, so be it. But if you farmed thousands or tens of thousands of credits, then you got in trouble. And then big fallout on Twitter. Varsity in particular, basically laying all the blame on Ubisoft, not taking any responsibility himself for sharing that potential or that particular exploit. And I think a lot of nuance has been lost in this conversation because at the end of the day, I think both parties are at fault. Ubisoft made an error in the game. They had an exploit. When you sign up to play the game, you sign a TOS. That means you cannot use these exploits. So those that did it also in the wrong. And I think Varsity, if he had his time over, needs to, if he finds this, use his contacts to contact Ubisoft directly. Get them aware of this and fix it. Don't farm clout from it and then go back and delete the video because you know you're in the wrong. If that doesn't work, R6 Fix is there. Literally just use that, report it, and then you absolve yourself of all responsibility.
Yeah, I think he probably just wanted the clout.
Yeah.
Being completely honest, I think he just wanted that and then didn't want the responsibility of what that might entail. Which honestly, I'm of the opinion, I don't think it's like the biggest wrong that you could make. In his situation, would I do the same thing? I don't honestly know, because it's a good opportunity to obviously get some attention, get some views. That's his job. Is he not just doing his job? It's in some way similar to like a paparazzi taking shots of a celebrity, right? It's not ethically right, but they do it. That's just their job. And I think that the only thing would be, don't just act all innocent though. You have obviously contributed to some level, maybe not a massive amount. Like I wouldn't say whether or not he's done what he's done and that's made it worse to a massive degree. Probably talking about maybe a couple hundred people, or maybe worse, 1,000 or something of the 20k that got banned. Maybe might have been influenced by him. So I'm not. Yeah, I wouldn't be getting my pitchforks out and being like, "Oh my god, Varsity, you're the bad guy." Like, nah, whatever. Like, honestly, it's right. Maybe that he could have contacted Ubisoft privately. But I think it's a bit that's a non-issue for me. I think the issue in itself is that the vast majority of people who did this would have probably done so without knowing from Varsity. There's just too many people that would have done this without obviously seeing that video anyway.
I guess the follow-up then from that is, should players who did this exploit be punished? And if so, what should that punishment be?
Of course they should be punished.
So the terms of service are pretty clear, right? You use an exploit, it's a bannable offense. Now, others have pointed out other instances in other games. I think Destiny's been a common example from Bungie, where if an exploit is used, those items don't get retracted and players don't get banned, or whatever the case may be. There may have also been like some dupe incident in like TF2 from Valve that also resulted in sort of them, putting their hands up and saying we fucked up. So should players be punished? Yes. What should the response from Ubisoft be? No. Should they publicly come out and denounce it? Like, what's the go?
Well, this is why it's called an exploit. You're exploiting something that shouldn't be there, right? That's just the framing of it. So you can't just sit back and be like, well, Ubisoft fucked up, and because Ubisoft fucked up, we'll take advantage of it. No, absolutely not. And I can use some good examples. One actually from RuneScape, and I'm being completely serious here. So a couple of years ago, one of the what are they? Not developers. I guess you could just say one of the developers who was working on the game privately made a mistake where they spawned in an object called a twisted bow, basically the most expensive item in the game. And obviously you'll laugh, but in terms of the in-game economy, it would have completely, no, I shit you not, killed the game. Like the entire game would have died. Like it's the most expensive item in the game. And it was just spawning in, and people could walk over, pick it up, and it wouldn't even leave. It was just like they fucked up, like it was a bug, and you could just walk in, and basically everyone in the game would have had this item, and money just would have become non-existent. And the game would have
hyperinflation.
Ridiculous levels. And so obviously, while the game was live, people were picking it up and then started having fun with it and whatnot. And Jagex, of course, the developer of RuneScape, had to shut the entire service down and do a massive rollback, and was probably at the time the most controversial thing that happened to the game.
I'll pick at that point then, because it's one that Varsity made. He says that Ubisoft could have simply removed the credits and skins from those accounts instead of banning them. Is that what they should have done?
Well, I mean, I think if they are temporary bans, the temporary ban is firstly a slap on the wrist for exploiting. And then secondly, a good opportunity for Ubisoft to really comb through and make sure they clean it out properly. In terms of what happened for that RuneScape incident, because they did a rollback, no one technically was punished, because the servers were cleaned, right? Like it just rolled it back prior to the basically an update went out, bug came in, so they just rolled it back to when that update came out, which was unfortunate because I think it was live for like a good 6 hours. So people made progress and got drops and things like that, and then that was all rolled back. But because they were able to do that, no one got punished. You wouldn't also have been able to punish everyone who did it. In this instance, the fact that they were even able to get 19,000 accounts and spot it all and get these bans out, allegedly, is actually quite significant without some kind of rollback. I think what would have been good actually would have probably been Ubisoft having a rollback in place for events and situations like this. Then you don't have to throw out the bans, because if realistically you've got that many bans going out, you would have been better off to roll back to servers and be like, oh, we made a fuck up, we made a mistake, people took advantage of it, but it doesn't matter because we rolled back the servers, so no one has been able to actually do anything with it anyway, so it didn't end up mattering.
Yeah, it's probably just not, I guess, in the technical wheelhouse. And that follows nicely onto the next point that Varsity makes, and one that I think was probably the most brain dead, is comparing. His point was, if Ubisoft can ban exploiters using this glitch, why are there still cheaters running around in ranked?
Yeah, I mean, one, you've got to look at it from the exploits perspective, is that people are interacting with Ubisoft directly. So Ubisoft obviously have got a far more control over what's happening with their own client in terms of like purchases in the shop system and stuff. So like there's not like a rogue hack injecting into the game or whatever and doing something external to the client. So obviously when it comes to exploitation of a mistake from Ubisoft's part, it's a lot easier to track that. It's a lot easier to just see all these accounts that have suddenly gained all these R6 credits and kind of what they've been purchasing from the shop. You've got probably backlogs of API feeding that data directly. So it would have been a lot easier to find that. In terms of actual cheating, the whole point of, well, not the whole point, but a large portion of cheating is that they try to hide it. Right? Like you're not just openly turning on a hack and then to the server saying, I'm hacking. Yeah. Like the way that these hacks work is that they try and hide themselves as a particular DLL file or, change its name, and so that it doesn't get picked up, so it doesn't get caught. That's the whole fucking point.
Yeah, I think it's a very much an apples and oranges argument.
Yeah.
The anti-cheat team is not even the team that would be looking into this shit. It would be
server team,
engineers and fucking transaction, and probably accountants and whatever bullshit, to look through the transaction
100%.
history. So it's a completely different argument. I think that one was pretty bad. And the only other thing I'll pick out from his argument was that he said, meaning Ubisoft banned a lot of their top spenders on their only profitable title. That is absolute a load of dog shit.
What?
I even looked through the latest financial report from Ubisoft, and they quite clearly they don't directly say what isn't profitable, but they highlight things like the Assassin's Creed series having good net bookings, the crew performing above expectations. Ubisoft is a public company. They can't come out and lie about that stuff or they get in big trouble. So
100%.
It's not their only fucking profitable title. That is just an absolute just lie. It doesn't make any sense. And was it even their top spenders? I mean, potentially, I guess, because you have to have all the items. I don't know, but
I mean, even then,
does that make it right? Like,
yeah, I mean, do you say that someone can go do something illegal, but because they spend money?
Yeah, I think that's just a terrible argument. It's like yeah,
I donate money to charity, so let me go and speed for free. Like it's like, well, you know what I mean? Like I spend all this money on the council. Let me speed through the street. Like it's fine. Oh no, we won't give him a fine because
it's like the people who get pulled over. It's like I pay your wage. It's like
what the fuck? No, that's stupid. No, look, honestly, the further you go in that thread from Varsity, the worse it gets for him. And
I think Varsity has some decent points, right? Ubisoft should be taking some responsibility for 100%. This. At the end of the day, it was their mistake in game. There's been no public statement.
Nah.
But then he goes on all these just tangents and clout farming. And that was what started this thing, was farming clout. And he doesn't take any responsibility.
And this is the thing, right? I'm playing devil's advocate for the guy. I don't know who the fuck he is. First time I've heard of him, to be completely honest. But like, I don't condone... not condone what he did. I don't think it's an issue. Like, whatever, you're a content creator. You're going to bring attention to these things, whether you are, and obviously he's going to say, don't do this or whatever. Everyone does those kind of videos. Any other game that has some kind of exploit, the content creators jump all over it. Fair enough, whatever. Obviously, you probably could then be like, look, I probably, have some part to blame in it. I apologize, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But taking zero ownership and then going on these tangents, and it gets worse and worse and worse as you keep going through this thread. That's the part where he just loses me. So, look, I don't have sympathy, but I also don't blame the guy. I'm pretty impartial on it just because the action that he did initially doesn't upset me that much, but then it just gets worse and worse anyway. So he kind of loses me by the end of it. So.
I think at the end of the day, multiple parties fucked up.
Yeah.
And I don't think the fallout from this is like some otherworldly disaster. It's like a couple thousand accounts, which is absolute 0.001%. People, again, don't realize there's a lot of active players in this game. 19,000 is fucking nothing.
Nothing.
Regardless of what you guys think, it is nothing. Trust me. Regardless of how much they're spending. So a couple weeks if they get banned, whatever, so be it. It's not the end of the world. Again, when you sign up for a live service game, you agree to terms of service.
Yeah.
If you don't like that, don't play the game.
And it's look, they're not even they're not permanent bans, temporary bans. Ubisoft will come through. They'll just clear out the credits and the renown and whatnot that they spend. And
hopefully they do acknowledge it. Maybe they will acknowledge it publicly and say, "Hey, this happened. This is what we did." But they're under no obligation to do so. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't happen again. Hopefully this means that future events it just gets patched and we don't have this shit to deal with.
I don't know why a game like Rainbow Six doesn't actually have a rollback. Like let's say you fuck up, you make this mistake, and I don't know, the servers have been live for 3-4 hours. You've been gaming, you've been in the stack, whatnot.
I guess the problem is
like the worst case scenario,
you roll it back, but to what? Because you can't.
You just roll back to when the
but you can't cancel the whole event without patching it. And what if this patch takes like 48 hours to implement? Think about all the money you're losing during that period of time or whatever, and then the technical debt from having to refund everything.
You can. Other titles have done it. Dead by Daylight once put out a Halloween event, which is pretty big for Dead by Daylight. Halloween's like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Essential.
And they fucked it up. I shit you not. And so what they had to do, they cancelled it on Halloween. It was not out. But then they released it like a week later.
Yeah.
So and then they extended it a week as well. So you had like 2 weeks of this Halloween event after fucking Halloween, but they still did it anyway. But because they had issues. So I mean, like, there's nothing that says like, okay, servers go live. There's this exploit, 3-4 hours. You guys are gaming, whatnot. As servers go down, roll back. You don't get any of the ranked points or whatever, the renown and things like that.
For all we know, Ubisoft knew about this issue pretty much immediately and were tracking it. And they were probably like, if it gets to a certain point, okay, we might do something about it in the moment. But perhaps anything to roll back or can the event or whatever would have been more costly
maybe
than the exploit was, and that's why they didn't do it.
I guess maybe if they roll back, take the servers down, cancel the event temporarily. I don't think you would have to cancel it for like permanency. Maybe they would look at that and be like, is that going to fuck us more? I don't know. I'm not privy to that. It's hard to say. I would like to think though that if it wasn't in it, and like what's stopping them from maybe then rolling it back, fixing it, putting it out a day later, and then extending it by 2-3 days, and then being like, we apologize, here's an extra 3 days. You get goodwill from that, then everyone gets a little bit more time, whatever. So there are things you can do, there are ways that you can fix it. Hopefully in future it just doesn't happen. We'll move on though from the controversy and move towards a little bit more of the esports side of things, which I guess there's probably not much on at the moment as we close out November, heading into December and the Christmas period. Such is the case with Rainbow Six. Of course, we're in this sort of lull again, even though technically the season is alive, right? Like you've just finished the second major for the year. You've got 6 Invitational coming up. Like, we aren't in an off season. The off season for me is between SI and the first major, or you know the first leagues starting back up again next year around March or whatever, right? And this is where it's a little bit strange for Siege, because a lot of other titles would go like league major, SI break, but Siege doesn't do that. Siege is like, and I'll start from league. So like March. So you do the league, then you have the major, then you do the big off season, then you do the league, then you do the major, then you have all this time again, then you do SI, and then you start it again. Like you do SI in February, and then you start the next league at the end of March. Like there's not a lot of time. Like why is there such a gap
SI
there?
Feels like Six Invitational has always felt like
a precursor.
It feels like the start of the season as opposed to the end of the season. I guess, partially because it's at the very beginning of the year, but also probably more so because it has such an extended break. I don't know the reasoning for that. I think the most obvious answer is that it is actually a precursor, because it is where they, market and launch the roadmap. So that's probably why. I think that is, most definitely the answer as to why. Because if you put it in, November, you put it like a similar time frame to Worlds, not only are you probably competing with that event for viewership, but you're also then like 3 months out, 4 months out maybe from the next season. So you lose all that traction that you would have gained from the event. So I don't think where the event is necessarily like a huge problem, but it's about filling that gap. And I know we're going to probably talk about it at the end. We could probably just plug it now. We have things like the Oceanic off-season tournament. I don't know what other regions are, having events, but good that we'll have some content down under. So that's good.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I agree with you. I don't think the issue in itself is the fact that it's in February or some kind of precursor. I think it's just the fact that we've got this massive gap from the Atlanta Major then to SI, which SI in itself, while not directly related to Atlanta Major, because obviously there's going to be teams competing at SI that didn't make this particular major based on SI points and such, it is still, of course, the most recent tournament. Being once we start SI, Atlanta's the most recent tournament. There's no play because of we don't even have SI quals. And I think maybe in years gone by, SI quals probably filled that gap, right?
Yeah, so that's also true.
So you would finish the major, and obviously then you would have a fair idea as to which teams are going, and then there'd be a couple of spots for SI quals. And the SI quals would then give you some kind of leeway, I think typically starting around December and January. So at least there was something, and we don't have that this year. We don't have that anymore. And I think that's ended up being a big miss.
Yeah.
So I think looking back on it now, you can really start to see the void that has been created in season, because again, major to SI, we're in season. You can't really call it an off. It's an off season for those obviously that aren't going to be at SI, of course. But for those that are at SI, they're grinding, they're playing, they're scrimming, they're ready to go. And there's no competition for them unless there's something external. So, obviously, you look at like a team like Bliss, they're going to get at least a lot out of this Oceanic tournament that's going to be coming up, so they'll get to play something before SI, so they can get back into the groove of things. Even though it's not going to be the competition that they would like, it's just at least something, and it gets them back into the environment. And I get, obviously, December's a difficult time. People go away, Christmas break and things like that. I'm not advocating that like, oh, we should be having a league during December, but I think trying to keep the SI esport, the Siege esports scene relevant from major to SI, it needs to be improved. I don't know if that's just through tournaments. That's through things like the Siege show from us, or other content creators, or other casters doing things, other little events, players streaming more. I don't know, but I think there needs to be a bit of a focus from everyone, from the community, not just Ubisoft, not just Blast, but from everyone in Siege, to keep the esports scene relevant through the major to SI period. Because the off-season period between stage 1, stage 2, whatever, because stage 2 is on the horizon. But I think this is a bit of a lull to have between a major and an SI. You agree?
Well said, brand manager Jake. You're rallying the troops. I feel incredibly motivated. Some roster changes though, and some other news. M80 have benched Kyno after him and the team severely underperformed at the major. Tweet. Didn't win a map, I don't believe. And I actually saw a video on TikTok last night. Jesse, analyst, has been making quite a few videos, and unfortunately for Kyno, it's pretty much him getting cooked, showing quite a few examples, especially against Bleed, where he was just not playing his role properly, dying first on smoke, playing poor positions. Obviously that infamous moment on the Montang, and Pengu roasted him on Twitter. So unfortunate for Kyno. Not a great event, but M80 have, realized that. And
is it a bit reactionary?
I don't know. It's a big call to make before an SI, but I think considering how poorly they performed, something radical had to change. If it means they end up playing worse in the short term at SI, well, they've got to bite that bullet. But I think they've probably seen enough now, and Kyno had such a poor event that it's kind of like, okay.
Is Yoga an upgrade though?
Potentially. I don't really know the state of NACG sports at the moment. It's not particularly great, and I don't know what the depth is like. I mean, Yoga does have experience at an SI, so I think he'll be okay. But it's always, especially in this meta, a nature. It's always, do they sort of fall into the team well? Do they slide into a role naturally? We don't know that until they play.
Of course, that's through the NA Leakers Twitter account. Yoga's replacement, so it's not fully confirmed.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I should mention.
No
but it was rumored by NA Leakers and then confirmed by NA Leakers.
Really?
The usually pretty spot on, I believe.
I don't know who was running that fucking account.
I don't know who's running that account at all, by the way, but they're usually pretty good. So I'll look. Take it with a little bit of grain of salt, but I wouldn't be surprised if Yoga does end up actually replacing Kyno. Not sure what his future is going to be. And while we're probably on that topic, there's then the rumor of Beaulo coming back and playing for Dark Zero at SI. That's from the same NA League.
That's a fever dream.
This is where it's like really difficult, because I guess you're going to be hit and miss somewhere. And to be fair to NA Leakers, they did say rumor for Yoga replacing Kyno and then confirmed. So maybe they got like some extra conversation. It's still just rumor phase for Beaulo. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, first and foremost, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Dark Zero would probably have to give him a pretty good deal, because Beaulo could just sit at home and probably co-stream the event and make $1 million. So unless Beaulo is really passionate and wants to get back into the game. I saw some actually pretty decent discussion on the Pro League Reddit about this, and I think probably the best point I saw was this, from a team and an org perspective for Dark Zero, does it really make sense? Because I highly doubt that Beaulo is going to be staying around for the long term. So why bring someone in as a replacement for this one-off event? Why not bring someone in that you actually believe in for the long term and heading into stage 1 of 24.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense from like a marketing perspective and stuff. Dark Zero would probably sell a decent amount of jerseys, but I don't really see much value outside of that.
I feel like at this point we should just start packing our bags and moving to North America, because we
Start a team.
half this show is really about North America. It's our most.
It is our most popular audience. So.
We love our Americans, and the NAL is very, very spicy, and very curious to see what these changes will bring. I think obviously Atlanta Major was a bit of a wake-up call probably for the North American region as a whole. Sure, they got a couple teams towards the finals, but none of them performed. None of them did well. They really plateaued for an event where I think a couple of the teams, especially the likes of Sonics, were certainly hyped up going into it. Dark Zero, M80, like they had some good copium teams to do well, and they all kind of shit the bed. So SI's definitely next on the horizon for them. And hey, credit, they're not wasting any time. If they feel like they need to make changes, they're making changes. Keeping it within the esports focus, but shifting to Korea. Not really as much Siege related. Sandbox and Brazil. We saw that tweet, of course, from Ima Chung, the CEO of Sandbox, a couple of weeks back regarding a bit of a swap, letting their LCK team from their League of Legends Korean team play against a League of Legends Brazilian team, but inverse then to help train up their Rainbow Six team. Now, the only reason why I'm bringing this up is they actually put out a tweet either yesterday or 2 days ago or a couple of days ago regarding the fact that their LCK Challenger League team did in fact play a couple of Brazilians. Now I looked a little bit into it. It's not as if it was a Brazilian league team, but it was a makeup of Brazilian players there for a boot camp.
Right.
So I'm not too sure if that's necessarily the reality of this actually coming to fruition, where the Sandbox Korean Siege team does end up going over to Brazil or playing Brazil online or whatever.
Stop shaking your leg, yeah. Shaking the plant.
No.
Or maybe that's the aircon. Sorry.
I believe that's the aircon.
Maybe
You've done it again. It's like the first episode where you thought the table was being shaken. Let me shake my leg. But at the very least, they're holding up one end of the bargain, where they've actually shown willingness to, teach some of the Brazilian league teams, and hopefully then maybe the Sandbox Siege team could eventually get some help from Brazil. So keeping an eye on that, and I thought I'd give that a bit of a check. And we've also got Koi returning back to Rogue in terms of the organization, which I like. I mean, what the fuck is a Koi?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a fish, I know, but
that was like the whole branding, management, weird turmoil. I didn't hear very nice things about Koi. I don't know if that's going to translate across to Rogue. No idea, but hopefully they get their shit together. I think the Rogue branding and stuff is cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Koi was equally nice, but whatever. I don't think that's really a huge talking point.
I wasn't a fan of the Koi logo and the branding.
They have cool. The Echo skin in game is quite nice.
I think the Rogue branding is a lot more
very
OG.
NA. It feels like very NA.
Is it NA? I think Rogue's
They used to have an NA team in Siege at least.
In Siege. I think they've always been EU though in other titles.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then obviously closing with the OCE Pre-Season Tournament, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but it is actually open qualifiers, which as of this episode going out, you'll still have a chance to sign up, participate, play. Good opportunity, of course, for the local region. And once again, shout out to Rect for continuing to work with Ubisoft and try and get these off-season tournaments up and running, which hopefully will be good. And there's actually a decent amount of play. Typically one thing with these particular tournaments is we don't really get too many days. Usually it's like a gauntlet over 2-3 days, but I think there's like a fair chunk of there's like a Swiss stage, and then there's the finals. It kind of emulates the major, which I kind of like actually as a way for these teams to actually play the environment that they aspire to play in, because obviously the actual league itself doesn't do that, especially if it remains as best of ones, for example, which hopefully that changes next year. For fuck's sake.
Yeah, it's like 6 days for the closed portion plus the open qualifier. So, I mean, it's a lot of Siege. Hopefully the teams, participate, get around it, take it quite seriously.
Yeah.
Decent prize pool as far as I understand. I don't know if that's public, so I won't state what it is, but it's still, it's good. And yeah, it's more content practice. Good for us as well. Because especially if we don't get SI, it's like a huge period.
Oh mate, if we don't if we don't get 6 invitational, and look, honestly, at no point do us as talent ever expect these kind of events, and even still, it's not an expectation. But it'd be really disappointing. I think that's been, and this is just speaking candidly, we like to do that. No bullshit on the old C show from Jake and Guzz, but obviously that's the next step for us, right? Is 6 invitational. We've done a major. Which is great. Love to do another one. Would be awesome to do another one. But 6 invitational, obviously we did one online, but it's not the same. And I think it's always good to have goals. It's always, in life in general, it's always good to have goals, whether small ones, medium term, long term. And obviously for us as a casting duo, that is the next goal, is to do a 6 Invitational. If we miss out on Brazil, that means we can't reach that goal until 2025. You know, that's a long, long way away. And so then that's a lot more grinding to do. And that's, you know, obviously then a bit of a bitter taste in the mouth. And it's kind of then like, what are we doing wrong? You know, so again, that's just speaking candidly. There is no expectations. Would love to do it. Would be, you know, dream come true for both of us to be working at 6 Invitational. I felt like as well, but again, speaking honestly, we've put in a lot of the work throughout 2023 as well, doing Copenhagen, doing a lot of different regions. Obviously, we've also done content on the side now as well. I think it's, for me, tooting our own horn, been our best year in terms of working Siege. I don't even think it's a debate. I mean, we've done 2020, 2021, 2022, now 2023. As we get towards the end of the year, and obviously we can kind of touch on it considering we won't really be doing anything else for the rest of this year. I think it's been our best year.
Yeah, I agree.
Give ourselves a pat on the back. Maybe we get a reward from it. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we put our best work on the broadcast, and I don't really know what more to say. I know we probably talked about this in the past, but I've always been a strong believer in you should be judged on your work on the day, and that's where we do our best. I've never, you know, regrettably probably not put as much effort and thought into, you know, networking and all that bullshit behind the scenes, because it's just not something that I really care for. I work to do well on camera and on cast, and I feel like that's what we do. So
it's all right. You got me for the networking anyway.
Yeah, I'll let you do all the bullshit, and I'll just focus on the game.
With that, and we'll probably look to close out this episode. Not a particularly long one, but we hit some big talking points.
Yeah, it'll do well.
It'll do well for episode 15 of the Siege Show. Now, also a little bit of a precursor. We've got so a new show coming out. Obviously, we won't spoil it unless you're in the Discord through Patreon. Then it's spoiled there, well and truly. But new episode coming out. It won't be from the Siege show. So at the very least, from this point until SI, the Siege show will be now bi-weekly, so it'll be fortnightly. And we will be adding in the Jake and Guzz show, which is we've teased it a little bit in previous episodes about adding in a little bit more variety outside of just Siege in itself. It just allows us to be a little bit more free. We can have some interviews, have some chats, talk about other titles, basically do whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah.
Whereas the Siege show, we want to obviously keep it completely Siege focused. So that just means that we won't be putting out an episode every single week for the Siege show, but the idea is to still have technically an episode from Jake and Guzz every week. Just one would be Siege show, one would be Jake and Guzz. And with that, we'll obviously look to bid farewell to everyone. Of course, we've got our exclusive content coming up. We'll be talking a little bit about a tweet from Bikini Body, just regarding the tactical state of Siege and whether or not it's arcade. If you want to hear us chat about that and our thoughts about Bikini Body's tweet, hey, get on that Patreon. You can, of course, get access to the exclusive content. We'll be filming that very, very shortly. If not, any kind of subscribe, any kind of comments, let us know how you're feeling about the Siege show and, of course, the upcoming Jake and Guzz show. But much love to all, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.